This is the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Kendall of the notaballerina.com travel blog. Every episode I'll share travel tales from several fellow travel lovers, and together we hope to entertain and inspire you, remind you of some of your own great travel experiences, and encourage you to hit the road again soon. Hello and welcome to episode 315 of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast about meeting locals when we travel. I'd like to firstly pay my respects to the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, where I'm recording this podcast today. Now, the topic of meeting locals when we travel is one of my favourites because, well, quite simply, it's one of my favourite things to do when I travel. It often becomes, those often chance meetings or non-chance meetings, but an opportunity to really get to know some local people, or even just random conversations where I learn, interesting things about the local culture or the way life works in a place. I just love all of that. And very often these are the stories that I'll tell over and over, or, even just fondly remember myself. For example, recently in Japan, I had a couple of moments that immediately spring to mind. For example, we had a lovely dinner at our ryokan in Nami Itakaigan on the coast north of Tokyo, a couple of hours up there. And I got to use my pretty scratchy Japanese to speak to two men who were staying in the same place because they were working, kind of short to medium term in the area. And we got to learn all about, their working history, where they were from, lots of bits and pieces, and also to hear about, the impact of the tsunami and stuff on them and their work as well. So that kind of thing was cool. And then on our very last night in Japan, we randomly walked down a staircase into a bar in Iwaki and met the owner, Kazuya, and got to have a fabulous chat with him as well. So those two memories are two of my very warmest moments from that trip in Japan. So that's why I like this topic about meeting locals. Now, my first guest today is Cristian Martinus of Sun Trails. So Cristian runs tours in Morocco, and he gets to know a lot of people from that perspective. And I asked him to tell me about this idea that people want to know and get to know local people when they travel.
Oh, for sure. I think that it's very much coincides with what our guests are asking us for. And I'm not a sociologist or an anthropologist, but it's interesting that people nowadays, especially those coming from the, say, developed north, and traveling to the underdeveloped south, they're looking for this human interaction, which I don't know, maybe it seems to be missing from certain societies. I have this example that it's for me, it was very striking. I tried to meet all of my guests after their tours, and discuss about how the tour went and what we could improve on and what was the best memory. This particular family was from the States. So they were people of a certain age and certain stature. They both had, I think, college degrees. And coincidence was that they had traveled to Granada and Andalusia before coming to Morocco. So they had been to the Alhambra and, all those other places in Andalusia. And they went on the tour in Morocco with one of my drivers, Mustafa. And Mustafa, with the guest that he's really, close to, he takes them to his family's house for them to have lunch together. Oh. But he doesn't tell them until the last minute. So it's always a surprise, It's like, I'm just going to take you, see a local family and maybe we'll have lunch together. And the guests are like, yeah, we'd love that. And then they have lunch and they say, oh my God, this lunch was great. This family is great. And then says, well, they're my family, and everybody's like, wow, so surprising.
Oh,
yeah.
That's so
nice. I was talking to these guests and they were telling me about how great the lunch was in Mustafa's with Mustafa's family. And then I somehow took the conversation to the Alhambra in Granada. And I said, what did you think about the Alhambra? I said, did you think it's just incredible? And the gentleman looked at me and said, you know what? Yeah, no, I agree. It was great. But I preferred more lunch with Mustafa's family. And I said, I thought that's just incredible because, you know, the Alhambra is compared to the Taj Mahal or, you know, places like that. It's just something unique in the world. And he was more impacted than by a lunch with a local family in Morocco. So I think that speaks a lot about our topic at hand here, but interacting with local people. You know, I think that really makes a difference.
Yeah. Why do you think we crave that so much?
Well, maybe coming back to what we just spoke about a few minutes ago, you know, people being more and more connected to gadgets and not so much with the person next to them. Maybe it's I'm not judging here or anything, you know, everybody makes his own choices, but this could be one of the reasons. We always, as a tour operator, you're always kind of, I'm always kind of wary of that trap to not fall into that stage authenticity kind of situation where you take people to places and it feels like you've already, you know, those people are already used to receiving people, and it's kind of becoming unnatural, you know, and that kind of transpires. I think the way we do it is that we always try to take people somewhere else. You know, it's not always the same family. It's not always the same activity, not always the same location. We try to change all the time. And we are blessed with a country where, you know, people are mostly available. I'm talking mostly about the countryside. Families and adults are mostly available to receive you, to welcome you, to offer you a tea. That's something which is very ingrained in the Moroccan culture, and that's something that we're blessed with.
I love this, and I really like Cristian's approach to, as he puts it, avoiding staged authenticity. And many of you will have been on some kind of trip or tour where there has been this staged authenticity, and yeah, you can spot it a mile off, and it's really not the same. It's nice to, you know, it's not a bad thing, but it's certainly not the same as, you know, really being able to have some kind of more genuine connection or more genuine visit with local people. Now, my next guest is Will Hatton from The Broke Backpacker, and I asked him for some experiences he's had with connecting with local people when he travels.
Couchsurfing is the one that immediately springs to mind. I've couchsurfed over 200 times around the world. I've also hosted quite a lot. And it's been a really amazing way it's been an amazing way to dive deeper into a local culture. And a lot of the highlights of like little things that I've seen whilst traveling has been when a local person has taken me to one of their random favorite spots that is like not online, it's not in a guidebook. So I think that you just get to see a place in a different way when you've got a local friend. And I'm very pro couchsurfing. Another option is Meetup, which they have like events all over the world and in all kinds of cities. They'll be like, oh, we're going to the park to paint some trees, or we're going to go play Frisbee or whatever. It's just like a cool way of meeting people. I do just often like to go out without my phone. And then that means that you've got to interact with people to ask for directions. And normally once someone's surprised that you're approaching them to ask them for directions has worn off, you can end up having some pretty interesting conversations that way. I also like just wandering around like old buildings again. And if I see someone there who like looks like maybe they're a gardener or like a key holder or someone who is somehow involved, I'll go up to them and I'll be like, hey, how's it going? What can you tell me about this building? And 9 times out of 10, these people know everything about this building and never get asked. And they're super excited to have the opportunity to tell you about it. So that's normally quite a gratifying way to talk to people.
Oh, that is an awesome tip. I've never really put that into words, but I have my own example of that when I lived in Japan, and I lived near Nara Park, and I would go to Nara Park quite frequently, and I came to see this older guy there, you know, quite a few times. And I don't know quite how we got talking, but it turned out he was like a guardian of the deer there. You know, they have sacred deer. Yeah. And so he knew the whole history of all the deer. Like, he was such a fascinating man. And same, like you say, I don't think many people asked him about it. You know, no one really talked to him usually. And I got the most, it's just a fascinating conversation. So I love this idea of kind of seeking out the the kind of old guy in the corner doing something and finding out what they've got to tell you. Have you got a couple of examples of times, just even small things like that maybe your couch surfers have shown you or anything that springs to mind?
Yeah, there's a couple. When I was in Israel, I couch surfed in Jerusalem in this like tiny little apartment, which was in the old city, and you could get from this apartment onto the roofs of the old city. And our host took us like all across the roofs, like scrambling parkour style, all around the city, and that was awesome. I also couch surfed in Jordan with a Rastafarian Bedouin in his like cave that his family had like hand carved over like, I don't know, a long time. And that was a very cool experience as well. He took us out into the mountains and was able to show us a lot of cave dwellings that like you just wouldn't see them otherwise. Maybe not quite as impressive as the ones in Petra, but the advantage is we had them all to ourselves. So that was very, very cool. And I think that when you do have those kind of experiences, it's quite often that you will find yourself in like this little spot which you have all to yourself. So that's what I love about it so much.
I said to Will that I'd never couch surfed because I've always been a bit worried about doing it as a woman solo or as a woman travelling with a child. And he had some good advice about couch surfing.
The good thing about couchsurfing is it all works on like a review-based system.
Yeah.
So like you can find someone who's got 50 reviews and stay with them. I would say that like if you're new to couchsurfing or if you've got some safety concerns or if you're a woman, I would only stay with people who have a few reviews. You can also opt to just stay with families or to just stay with women. There are a small number of poor players on the platform and they're all single men. So, I mean, right. if you wanted to just play it real safe, you could just avoid single men. But there are families on there as well, which is great.
Yeah. I've read, I think, probably all of Stefan Ort's couchsurfing in Iran, couchsurfing in Russia, that whole series of books. And so I always think, yeah, that does sound like a pretty cool way to go. I've done, fair few homestays and stuff, but I've never couch surfed. So I feel like maybe one day I must.
Yeah.
My final guest today is Dara Bruton. I chatted with her earlier in 2023 about digital nomading, and I asked her this time to tell me some more ways that she has connected with local people on her travels.
I like to take cooking classes when I go somewhere. So a couple of years ago, I had a friend and she has foreign exchange students a lot. And so she goes and visits them, when they go back home or whatever.
Clever.
And she says she always takes a cooking class in whatever country she goes to. And I was like, wait, that's a thing? Like you can do that? And then she showed me there's a website called like Cookly, and you can just put in wherever you're going and it'll pull up like all the cooking classes available. And they're usually just not like cooking schools. It's usually like someone in their kitchen or whatever. So I took one in Marrakesh, Morocco, and that one was actually at a restaurant it was like a chef-owned restaurant, I believe. And so the chef taught the class, but she didn't speak English, so there was a translator as well. And he was like a young kid. I think he was like a barista in the restaurant. And so he, while you're cooking, like there's a lot of waiting time, like while things boil or whatever. And so we were just having like this great conversation about like what it's like in Marrakesh. And then of course he was asking like what's like in America and like cultural differences, like money, like all of those kind of things. And it was just like a really fun way to like chat with someone because it's like an extended time. We were there for 4 or 5 hours. So like it was a good like long conversation. And so in Chiang Mai, I was like, we have to take a cooking class again because like that was so fun. And so we ended up taking one with this actually like a really renowned chef, I guess, like Gordon Ramsay wanted her to be on the show. So she has like pictures with Gordon Ramsay, but she was busy in Hong Kong whenever he called, and so she was like, no, I can't do it. I was like, who just turns down Gordon Ramsay? But okay, you do you. But she was just like a lovely woman, and it was attached to her house. Like she had built this like open air like cooking place and next to her house. It was like a private class, like maybe like 4 or 5 people could go at one time. And she went over like each dish, and in both of those cooking classes they also took you to the market and showed you like how to buy things and like what you're looking for, and like they kind of pointed out stuff that is unique to that country. And like the one thing I remember in Morocco is saffron was so cheap.
Oh, wow.
They were just like, oh yeah, all of this, you can have this for like a couple of dollars. And I was like, do you know how expensive saffron is? And like I'm like telling the chef, and she's like, "Why would you pay that much for saffron?" And I was like, "Well, if you want it,
can we not?"
What you gotta pay." But it was like really fun because like they explained like the different, like in Morocco was really about spices.
Makes sense.
They're big on spices there. So like she would go over like all the spices, and then in Thailand it was a lot of like different vegetables and fruits that we don't have here in America. I mean, you probably get them at the international. But
they're not in the everyday shops in the hut. And often I see those and I don't really know what to do with them.
Yeah.
So
I shop at the international grocery store a lot, and there's like a sauce aisle that's just like sauces from everywhere. And I'm like, I want to eat all of these, but I don't know what to do with them. And, I'm like, I don't want to just like accost somebody in the grocery store like, what do I do with this? So I'm like, I'll just have to keep taking cooking classes till I learn how to use all of these vegetables and things.
Sounds like a good strategy, though, to me. I'm with that.
Yeah. And then you get to eat whatever you cooked. So as far as like, budget when you travel, like you're getting an activity plus a meal. And it's generally a pretty extensive meal too, because like you make like an appetizer and a dessert and an entree and a soup, or, like whatever. Like there was multiple courses. And
you don't go home hungry from a cooking class.
No. Actually, like, I couldn't even eat everything. And then you're, like, super impressed with yourself, right? Because
I know, right?
Like, you made this thing. Like, I cannot recreate it. I need the chef there to teach me, but...
This is also my problem.
It was just it's like a really, like, relaxed environment to chat with someone and just learn more about the, the country and the food. And I really like to eat. So anything that revolves around food, I'm like all in on that one.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I 100% agree. And I think what the important part is, there's a lot of important parts because the food is good and all of that.
Yeah.
But the time part, because even if you go on another kind of tour, a small one with local people, there's still always something to do. So they're always kind of busy. They're taking you somewhere or whatever, there's less downtime. Whereas in a cooking class, like you say, there is often those kind of moments where, and, it might be 10 minutes or whatever, there's times where you're just, we're waiting for something to boil or waiting for this. And, and there's no particular agenda at those moments. And you get to have these more natural, just what's going on in your life kind of conversations, which are really special because it's hard.
It is.
It's hard when you travel to get those kind of moments because you can't just go up to someone in the street and say, "Hey, tell me what life's like here." I mean,
trying to live their life.
I practically try. Like, I'll accost anyone and talk to them, but
they're like, "I'm trying to go to work, ma'am."
Yeah, exactly. I think Dara and I have the same approach to chatting with people as we travel the world. Speaking of cooking classes, our conversation reminded me of a more recent cooking class experience I had during July when I got to visit the Asa farm stay near Chiang Rai in northern Thailand, and we had the kind of cook together class, and then we ate together. And I think, especially because it was this kind of cook along, cook together experience, so it was not designed to be like a really high skill cooking class. It was much more that kind of family farm stay approach. Let's all do this, and it was just really, really relaxed and casual, and we could chat and get to know people better, and then eating together. It was just a really, really lovely one. So I think that Dara's suggestion is a really good way to meet local people. So, thank you so much for listening to episode 315 of the Thoughtful Travel podcast. Some links for you to check out. First of all, Cristian Martinus joined us from Sun Trails, and you can find out more about his trips in Morocco at sun-trails.com. I then chatted with Will Hatton, or The Broke Backpacker, and you can find out more about Will at thebrokebackpacker.com. And lastly, Dara Bruton writes for travelness.com. And Dara actually mentioned also the Cookly site, which I hadn't heard of before, but I had a very enjoyable browse around looking at the different cooking classes you could book around the world. And you can find that at cookly.me. I also mentioned that episode about my Chiang Rai experience. That's at episode 302 if you want to have a look at that. I'll leave links to all of these in the show notes. Don't forget also to come along to our Facebook group or our LinkedIn group for Thoughtful Travellers. Just search for Thoughtful Travellers in either platform, or you can find the links in the show notes. So for this episode, the show notes are at notaballerina.com/315. And if you are listening to this episode around the time it's released, which will be between Christmas and New Year of 2023, then thanks so much for joining me all this year. And I wish you all the best for a very happy 2024. And I hope to chat further then. So as always, thank you so very much for listening. This has been another episode of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Show notes and other information are at notaballerina.com/podcast. Join me again soon for another chat about why we travel. Bye for now.